Welcome to my house. We are actually in my house, although it's at my home office. And thank you very much to Yesthiel Singh, who has joined us today. Yesthiel is the General Counsel and Company Secretary of IQ Business, the largest independent management consulting firm in South Africa. He's fully responsible for all legal matters within the organization and also attends to the company secretarial function, and has just told me also he is the COVID responsible officer as well. Yesthiel supports the executive management and the board of directors, and has previously held other positions. And I believe that you also, I think, a non-exec director of a number of different brands within the organization, and we'll get to in a minute. But thank you very much for joining me today. What I'd like to do is kickstart things. We first touched base probably a couple of years ago now, and through the power of LinkedIn. But one of the things, when COVID hit back in 2020, March 2020 in particular, in the lockdown, one of the things that we did at GRM is we sort of kicked into gear in a number of different ways, but we really wanted to reach out to leading legal people like yourself and professionals like yourself, general counsels and partners of law firms, and really find out how it was affecting them to start with. What had been the immediate outbreak from the lockdowns. And you very kindly took part in what we called our 5 in 5 series, which was supposed to be 5 quick questions in 5 minutes, although I'm sure it took some a little bit longer, given the responses we had were enormous. But it was very interesting to get some insight from yourself and from other professionals at your level into how the legal market had reacted to the immediate lockdown. Now, what I want to ask you and how we kick off is, how have you found things? A very general question, but how have you found things in the past, well, I suppose 18 months that we've been dealing with COVID from a legal and running a business perspective?
Thanks for having me, Rob. I think, from the last time we touched base on the 5 on 5 series, I think COVID had just hit then. And it was something which was particularly new to organizations around the world and to legal departments. And I think at that juncture, I shared some thoughts with you in terms of how we were dealing with it as a business versus as a legal department, and the different elements that we had to kind of pursue. I think in the months up to now, we've actually become a lot more comfortable in these new ways of working. I think a lot of people have accepted it as a norm. I think companies are still grappling between a blended model of remote working and coming back to their office. But, I think companies are really trying to be inventive and creative in terms of how do they deal with getting the best value for their organization with the now. And that conversation changes every couple of weeks. And I think that becomes something which we actually need to, there's always new variants which are coming about. Is the vaccine effective against a particular variant? And it's difficult to put together a medium-term plan, if I can call it that. And I think, decision making needs to be agile when it comes to those type of things, and business agility becomes a very important theme within the boardrooms and C-suites, particularly in terms of guiding through the proverbial COVID storm, if I can call it that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we've heard from others as well, from the many conversations I've had, is that certainly from a legal perspective, well, first of all, how many staff do you have in your office up there? I mean, pre-COVID, how many would you have had in the office?
Our staff contingency within the group is about over 1,000 staff members. We have an office in Cape Town. We have 2 offices in Johannesburg. It's actually, recently it's going to be 1 office now. We've terminated the lease, with one of the kind of satellite offices which we've had in Braamfontein. And as you can imagine, there's no use for space. So we're actually paying rental for space that we're actually not using. So it becomes an important element now. How do you save on costs in today's circumstances? So typically where we had a very full, vibrant office park with lots of people walking around. We now, on a strong day, we're seeing about 30 to 60 people within this very big office park. So it's evident that the numbers have deteriorated quite a bit in terms of people that are coming into the office. And it's interesting to see, as I mentioned to you, Rob, it's difficult to plan, but when the COVID numbers are lower, you can see people are a bit more comfortable to come into the office. Naturally, when the numbers go up quite a bit, people get scared, and I don't blame them. So they automatically divert to working remotely. But it's interesting to see how those. As I mentioned to you, I think I'm one who actually comes into the office almost every day. It's important. So do the C-suite. Here at our business, and I think for me personally, I think that conversation amongst our C-suite has been vital in terms of every day guiding and navigating the business. Because as we know, it's difficult all the time to contact somebody on Teams. You got to see whether they're available, are they away, are they in a meeting. I think here, being in the office, for me, within our C-suite section, just easier for me if I see my CEO, for example, just finish off a meeting, grab him for a quick chat to share some ideas, use him as a sounding board.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. In many ways, it's changed how we've worked. But I also think what I've found when I was talking to a couple of other general counsels as well is that they went from, I think the immediate sort of, as soon as we went into lockdown, everybody kind of went, okay, well, obviously the health and safety of the people that work here is paramount, right? Everyone go home, that's fine. And as things started to ease up a little bit, you're trying to make the business decisions that fit in with the strategy, or does the strategy need to change? But also, when it comes to the people, sometimes it was like, well, are we legally allowed to be, asking them to come in at this present time, or do they have to stay at home? And then some of the guys were saying to me that in many cases, they've then had to change the remit of the people's jobs. They've had to change their targets. And in many cases, obviously, in South Africa, that can sometimes be quite hard because you're effectively changing a job description. And that is often tricky, especially in larger companies like yourselves. I'm assuming that you've also, from a legal perspective, faced those kinds of challenges as well.
Absolutely, Rob. And I think, as COVID compliance officer and general counsel, and being responsible for policy in the business, I think wearing all of those hats, this theme becomes quite prominent. And we actually spend a lot of our time trying to manage that, because the health crisis is of utmost importance. As a professional services business, our people are our key resource, and it's particularly important to look after them and protect that. But with that comes the balancing act of how do we enable business within the legal department and within the broader business. As we mentioned, the policy within the country is constantly changing. We're constantly diverting between a level 2. I mean, just last night, the president mentioned that we're going from a level 3 to a level 2. And each and every single time, we need to be agile. And as a business, and an executive team particularly, we're getting together to discuss those as and when they happen and determine what does that mean for us. With regards to those particular decisions, the legal element becomes particularly important. And we've actually reached out to our labor lawyer partners, which are a company that we use, and the advice that we've been getting from them in terms of what can we do, what can we not do, what does the labor law say about imposing mandatory vaccinations, what are our clients imposing, so we're dictated by those type of things. What would be best for our staff? So we're constantly having to look at those things, on a weekly basis. It's not a question of let's put out a policy and we review it in 3 months. Every week or every 2 weeks, we got to see if it's still relevant and make decisions on that basis.
Yeah, of course. And our company and my company, GRM, is a lot smaller in numbers in terms of your company at IQ, but we face the same challenges. And what I found was that first of all, you kind of have to wear 2 different hats. You have to wear your personal hat, which wanted to keep my family safe and myself safe, and then you have to keep, and then you wear your work hat, which is what am I, what can keep my staff safe? Can we, what can we do? What does the law, like you said there, what does the labour law say in terms of working from home? What do you have to provide, and that kind of thing? And now as we sort of, you touched on it brilliantly there in terms of the different levels that the government have put us under here. What does that really mean for us? Where does it mean? Does that mean that the virus has got safer? Does it mean that what does it mean for our workflow? Where does it go? And then I think you touched on something there. But one of the conversations we've started to have in our office has been about ultimately the vaccination, and whether we want to be the type of business that enforces it upon people, or do we really need to, and it's a huge discussion, because then you get into people's real general beliefs about the vaccines and vaccines in general, and you want to make sure you're respectful for all. So I can imagine with a company of your size, the challenge must be tenfold, hundredfold from what I'm having to deal with.
And Rob, the thing is with that is, we're all trying to protect something here, as you mentioned, and the regulations are constantly changing. I mean, COVID has been around for more than 18 months, and we're already on version 6 of our policy, because, as we move into different alert levels, that comes with a different set of restrictions, different requirements. As the science develops as well, in terms of what the medical profession and the scientists are discovering about the viruses, so too do the regulations they're influenced, and that will guide how business works. And that, with regards to the vaccination, as you mentioned, there is no right or wrong answer. And I think one thing which becomes prudent, and I think where businesses need to be responsible, is to actually communicate with their staff. How are their staff feeling about their vaccine? Is it something which the staff would be inclined to do? Is it something that most of the staff have already engaged in? If staff members are anti-vaxxers or don't want to get the vaccine for any particular reason, what is that rationale? What is that reasoning? So that you can determine whether or not those are valid reasons. And a lot of the time, sometimes it comes from misinformation. So what can you as a business, what can your human capital team do to try and bust some of those myths? What data can you share with your staff, so that they can get a better understanding for themselves in terms of whether the vaccines do work or not? And I think you always got to keep in mind, what is the goal with regards to this vaccine element and agenda which you're trying to drive? Is it so that we can all get back to the office and have some sense of normality? Is it to protect the lives of your family? Is it to protect the lives of your staff? And that's different for everybody in terms of why they want to get it,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think as well, I'm sure you guys have done the same thing, but we've really looked at, and I know lots of other legal departments and law firms have done the same thing, where we've really looked at people's output, people's productivity. We've looked at where they work best. I mean, one of the first things I said to people during the first lockdown was, even when we come back to the office, tell me what it is about your day when you're working from home that you really enjoy. Is it going for a walk in the mountain here in Cape Town, or is it going for a run, or going to, when gyms were still open, or in one of those windows, or is it taking the dog for a walk, or whatever it might be? Because you should keep that, because if that helps you then be happier and productive, then we should keep that. Then you've got to look at, yourself. Some of us work better in an office, some of us work better at home. And you're trying to get your staff to sort of act and think in a very mature way, and really break down their own productivity and go, okay, I need to be in the office here. And you're factoring all of that in with space, and having too much space, like some firms have had. It's really interesting time.
Of that conversation, Rob, what becomes very important is actually the human element. What does working from home mean to that particular colleague or staff member of yours? Do they have kids which they now need to assist with homeschooling? And does them being at home better enable, does them being at home better enable that, and what would that mean for their kids? And you got to try and look at this balancing act. And as you said, the value and output becomes very important, and you got to kind of manage it very carefully and determine, look, actually your performance is top notch, and you're still managing to discharge all your duties, if not better, whilst working from home. This is working out really well for us as an organization. Or you look at it and say, look, your hours are slipping, your value, your output's really slipping. Can we look at, or what can we do to enable a better working environment? So you got to be quite careful with how you look at it. And the balancing act is a very delicate process, and you got to look at each person's particular scenarios, and you can't be insensitive to a particular person's home circumstances. And really got to look at those, I think, when you're making your decision. And particularly when it comes to your policy. And that's why I say, communication becomes really, really important. Get out surveys to the business, use the technology at your disposal to see what are people feeling, what's working for them, what's not working to them. And I think, yeah, it's a really, really delicate balancing act, as I mentioned.
Yesthiel, I think you've really touched on something there as well, in respect of being respectful to each person, individual, their circumstances. Because as we know, living in this wonderful country that we do, there are certain areas of Johannesburg and Cape Town where, let's just say, electricity isn't always on, to be honest, and Wi-Fi isn't always strong. Wi-Fi isn't always available. So actually, or circumstances at home. You mentioned kids there, which I have two of, and I had to start homeschooling. But there are other people who live with their wider family, and I know that we've had the situation a couple of times in our office where people are, they've got 10 or 11 people in the house. I mean, and they're still trying desperately to hit their targets and work the way that they would normally work. But offices being shut didn't help them. And I, as the leader of the business, had to take that into consideration. So yes, you're absolutely right there. But in terms of you, and I know one of the things that I know the listeners of our podcasts and our interviews find interesting is really what the person who I'm talking to, what their journey has been like. Obviously, you are still, well, you look young and fresh, and a young, fresh professional in South Africa, mate. You've reached an incredible, nice height and general counsel of a big, major business. But it'd be really interesting to know how you got there. How you found your path in law, and obviously I can see from LinkedIn, I see that where you've studied and that kind of thing. But you mentioned briefly just before we started recording. Did you grow up in KZN? Did you grow up in Durban?
Yeah, so I grew up in KwaZulu-Natal, Rob. Interestingly enough, I get straight into the story. I actually come from a family of lawyers. Both my parents are lawyers, my dad, and they both have their own practices as well. So law is something which I can safely say is in my DNA. So I had no choice. I had no trouble with regards to making those choices. I grew up in Westville in KwaZulu-Natal. I schooled there. And then I studied law at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. I then did my articles at a firm in KwaZulu-Natal. And then after that, I actually wanted to go and work in my dad's firm. And I actually learned a lot of my key skills from that experience, because my dad gave me my own set of files, my own matters, and I did that for a year. And that was like for me, it was an invaluable experience working with my dad, obviously, as my boss, him teaching me his experiences in law, him, taking me to court with him, just kind of being mentored by my own dad. I think that was an exceptional experience. And then I moved to Johannesburg, and I moved for a corporate legal role as in-house counsel. And I think during my law degree, I did a lot of thinking about where I want to be. And I had always thought that I'd like to go into in-house counsel. I was fascinated by business. I think actually when I say law was in my DNA, and I had no real trouble making the choice to study law. At some juncture, I was also grappling with, do I do a commerce or a business science degree as well? So I was always very inclined towards business, and I'll touch on that just now as I talk about the development of my career. So then I moved to Johannesburg for my first core in-house legal opportunity, which was within Continental Outdoor Media, which is now JC Deco, which is the largest outdoor advertising company in the world. And I mean, I really got exposed there to business. I think I had a legal role, but I was also put in charge of the site rental team there. Managed that team, and I got involved in some business dealings, getting involved with numbers, which was not particularly something I had to do. Going out and negotiating leases. Look what works in terms of financially for the business, but also legally. And I really got a kind of a blended model of this commercial element blended with the legal element, and I thought that was a great experience. And then I moved on to a company called Cartrack, a JSE listed company, where I was group legal advisor for a big organization, and assistant company secretary. And I think, Rob, if I look back at my career, one thing I'm particularly grateful for, and which I think has really turned me into I'm hoping, a good in-house and good general counsel, and I would say perhaps accelerated my career, to get to the role of general counsel at this age, was having great mentors. And I'm grateful to God for that. And I think that's very, very important. I had mentors, from my dad to the both the mentors I had in the legal space at my previous companies, which really committed time towards teaching me different skills in the in-house legal space, your contract negotiation, what works, what doesn't work, and them sharing their teachings with me. But not only in the legal space, but also coupled with the business experts that I've had the pleasure of working with. I've worked with some really big business leaders who have driven businesses really strong, some strong executive officers, some strong board of directors. And I think if I can just use the opportunity to give advice to some up and coming young general counsels or young in-house counsels or senior legal advisors, is to use those opportunities. Use those opportunities to learn not only in your legal space, but also about business. What drives business? What drives strategy? And I think that became really important. And I think it set some strong foundations for me in my career.
It's really interesting you say that, because it's the mentor side of things is something we touch on quite a lot. We, as you know, we as a business don't really work in the sphere of the junior lawyer, but we do once or twice a year. In fact, in the last year, we've done it 4 times. We do a talk for the students of some of the universities here. This year we've done UWC, Rhodes, and a couple of others that escape me at the moment. But one of the things we touch on there is the importance of learning from your principals and learning from you, and trying to find the right mentors for you, people who will put back into you. Your dad obviously could have gone one of 2 ways. He was obviously a positive mentor, but he could have given you a really hard time, as some fathers would. But it sounds like he really got you into how it was to be a lawyer.
And I mean, as I said, it's something I've been exposed to from a young age, going to my parents' firms on holidays, helping them with admin things. At that stage in your life when you're a 11, 12-year-old and you want to be outside playing cricket or soccer with your cousins and brothers, and they're making you fold envelopes and letters and post it away, you think it's torture. But those skills you're learning at a young age, just getting exposed to it, I think were really important. Rob, what you guys are doing for the universities, I think, it's invaluable. Just to give guys those skills, teach them what to look out for, help them to make the decisions in terms of, well, what does a career in law entail? And I think so. I mean, as I said, I'm so grateful to have been given mentors, and to give back. I often engage in helping to mentor young up and coming lawyers, not on an official basis, but just a call now and then to help them guide some career making decisions, what to look out for, when they colleagues of mine or friends of mine ask me to speak to their kids, I think they often find it easier to relate to somebody who's younger. If they talk to a younger kind of in-house legal counsel who can kind of, relate to their experiences and what they're looking out for, the challenges they're facing when making those decisions, versus chatting to somebody who's slightly older who may not be able to contextualize. So that's something which I love to get involved in, to just help the others to make those decisions. And, as I said, it's particularly because I know what the value of those mentorships meant to me. If I can help somebody else to make those decisions and help guide them, then I feel that I'm doing my part in terms of giving back.
I think that's amazing. Yeah, and maybe, and that's largely where I come from as well. I've seen so many. Certainly, I've been involved with lawyers now from a recruitment perspective for 20 years, almost 20 years. So I've seen lots of youngsters come through departments, and it's always struck me in terms of what the difference between. I mean, I can still remember being at university myself, but it's always struck me the difference between what you learn and what is actually practical. And I'm sure, yourself as a lawyer, it's very, very different from the day that you step into a law firm or you go to court. Is very different from what you learn. And nowadays, obviously, less so, I suppose, in-house, but certainly in practice, there's a huge amount of drive and need for business development skills and client skills and things like that, which you don't always necessarily learn.
And one thing I've noticed, Rob, is you always you see this when you're chatting to somebody who's determining, trying to make a decision in terms of what to pursue in a legal career, and they ask you, what do you think I should specialize in? And say, well, buddy, I'd advise you not to make that decision now. Finish off your degree, go into a good firm, get some experience doing your articles, and then learn about what the law actually means. And as your career develops, then you can determine, this is what I want to specialize in. But it's difficult to say, before you even done your degree, I want to specialize in that. But you do get some people who say, actually, I do want to specialize in commercial and corporate law, or I do want to focus on constitutional rights. But I mean, my advice is typically go and finish your degree, get some experience, and that will help to guide your decision making.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, so you've had a wonderful, nice career trajectory since, and you speak obviously very highly of the people that you've worked under and those that have helped shape you as a professional. But it must have been, I'm guessing it must be tough to have left KZN, to leave the family and to move to Johannesburg. And I mean, obviously it's a few years ago now, but was it a tough decision to move away from the family nest, as it were?
It was. I'm very, very, very close to my family. I mean, it was my brother and I. We lived with my mom in KZN. We are both very, 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 very close to my mom. And I mean, my parents are divorced, so we live alone with my mom. So to make the decision to leave my mom alone and to move to Johannesburg was particularly tough. And I'm still exceptionally close to my family, and I'm just grateful that I'm actually in Johannesburg and I can get in my car and have a quick 6-hour drive and be there for my family if need be. Funny enough, whilst the riots were going on in KZN, Rob, recently, I was actually there with my family. So that was quite a surreal experience as well. My brother's now working in London. He's pursued an awesome opportunity there. So I'm left here, and I'm the oldest grandson in the family as well, and I was the first person to make the move to Johannesburg. Away from the nest, as you speak. So it was a tough decision, but I think in terms of my career growth and my career path, I think it's one of the best decisions I've made for my career. Obviously, it comes at a price from time to time, but as I mentioned, I'm grateful to be quite close to my family, so that if I do need to go back, I can for whatever reason.
Yeah, I share it with you, Yesthiel. I grew up as an only child, so I was very, very close to my mother. So when I had to, when I made the decision for my career to leave the UK, which is now 15 years ago, I think, it was a tough decision. So I can imagine what you went through. Your brother trumped you and went to London. he went further away, but. Oh, okay. So he's subsequently gone to London.
My brother and I are close. We're best friends, and again, for him to move and pursue this opportunity in London was also tough to see him go. But it was awesome opportunity for him. He didn't look back, and that's no, just from a human perspective, Rob, noticing the challenges that he's experiencing now as well. With being in another country away from family. For me, it's a lot easier. My family is quite close, as I mentioned. It's just down the road. For him, he's quite a long flight away, so it becomes a lot more challenging for him. But I commend him for being brave enough to take that chance and pursue what's best for his career.
Now, it's wonderful that you recognise that, actually, Yesthiel, because it is a brave move. It is brave to move when you're so close to your family, like he is, and you are, and I am. That to get up and move isn't hard, and obviously he's, it's very difficult to build a new life in a new city and or in a new country. So I commend you. I commend you both. But obviously, yeah, he has the difficulty that I have in terms of the fact that South Africa is on the red list for the UK, so he can't really travel here easily, and I can't really travel back easily either.
What I'm seeing in the news is I'm hoping that's going to change soon. And I've actually told him, I said, the moment South Africa is removed from the red list, I'm hoping that I can come and spend a month with you there, work remotely, and just spend some quality time with him. Because as you mentioned, COVID's restricted that. It's tough. Planning a trip is not, let's go and get your visa and let's get on a plane and go and visit. There's a whole lot of other elements which you need to consider, and you're not sure whether or not those elements are going to change 2 or 3 hours before you jump onto your plane. You literally,
Or whilst you're in the air, maybe.
there's a lot of things you got to balance with that. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. No, I mean, and again, going back to what we tell the students as well, and because they often ask me, and I'm sure your brother's been asked it before, in terms of, if you see your city, if you see your life and your career in other cities or in other countries, how do you make that happen? And that's one of the things that I get asked a lot, and I don't really have an answer apart from the fact that if you work hard enough and you want it enough, you will make it happen. And that's kind of how I face most of the challenges in my life.
We spoke about the mentorships and stuff, and I always knew that when making the decision to pursue an opportunity outside of home, you're going there, you need to give it 150%. You need to go and put your all in, because you've made a decision to go now and pursue this opportunity. You need to put hard work in. You need to put hours. There will be blood, sweat, and tears, but you need to constantly keep driving in it. And you got to remember all those experiences which led you to that particular point, and you just got to keep pushing and give it a fair chance at making the most of it.
Yeah, it's true what you say. Whilst you were talking, that I thought of someone I used to know when I lived in Hong Kong for many, many, many years, and they would really only want to ever hire for their business foreigners who were coming in, and I'd say to him, I said to him once, "Why do you do that?" He goes, "Because they need to be here. They've worked. They're going to work 150% to make it work." Rather than having to go home. So he had a theory, but I'm not sure. It wasn't one I stuck to. But in terms of you and your career, like I said, it's a lovely trajectory. Is there any mistakes you've made? Is there anything that you've done that you look and think, I shouldn't have done that? Or is there anything that stands out that you can tell me?
Full of mistakes. I mean, you have to make the mistakes to mold you into being good at what you do. For myself, you've had to make a lot of mistakes into molding me into a good general counsel. Any specific mistakes which I feel that I regret? None. I don't think as I said, I've made lots of mistakes which have led me to this point, because you learn from those mistakes, and as I said, I've been grateful to have mentors to talk through those mistakes with me, committed time to say, look, yeah, you're doing this differently. Maybe you should change this, or maybe you should change your approach when you're negotiating this, So as a young attorney, you're kind of thinking, you've watched Suits, you want to be Harvey Specter and Mike Ross. You're going to go in there and you're going to show these guys in the negotiation. But is that necessarily in the best interests of the business, and then you get a mentor coming in and telling you, no, no, let's temper down on this point, perhaps we can indulge them on this, or we can have a conversation, and it's not a hard no. So you, as you're going along, you're making lots of mistakes and kind of learning from them, and I think that's particularly important, and I felt that those mistakes have been useful in my career.
Yeah, and life in general as well.
In life, in life in
Yeah,
general as well, and I think the when you have these mistakes and stuff as well, I think the important thing is to make sure that you are learning from them, and that you're a stronger lawyer or a stronger in-house counsel from that experience. And I think that becomes particularly important, even now with the COVID thing, and as I mentioned, businesses being agile in their decision making. You gotta look constantly, every week, every 2 weeks, what works, what doesn't work, and as part of that, there will be some mistakes. Nobody has the answer. There is no manuscript to this. So you have to be agile in your thinking, and you have to acknowledge that we may make some wrong decisions, but we need to be able to pivot quickly from that. But making wrong decisions, you should be able to learn from them and adjust to them. Yeah.
It's part of the journey, isn't it? I think. The one thing now, look, one of the things that I find here, and I'm sure you share, many people do anyway, is you clearly seem to be a very positive human being, which is wonderful, and I'm exactly the same. I come from a position of can do rather than cannot, and I'm sure you seem very similar. And I think you briefly just touched on the riots there, or the protests that recently happened in KZN and Johannesburg, and I really don't think we saw enough of it down here in Cape Town. What I mean by that, we didn't get enough coverage to really understand exactly what was happening. But I think there's a couple of things that made me think while you were talking there. One is the agility that clearly your business has shown, and you show going through the pandemic. But I also find it, and I do have a point that all links together, but I find it a wonderful thing about South Africa is that of all the countries I've lived in the world, of which there have been many, luckily, and I've worked out the other day, I've actually placed lawyers in over 40 countries as well. So let's just say that I've placed the countries I've worked in, of all those countries, I'm not sure there is a nation that is so adept and so skilled at navigating difficulties as the South Africans. And I think when you if you are abroad and you want to hire people who can adapt to any situation, I would suggest you come and look at the South African market, because one minute you're talking about, it's a small example, but I was hosting a webinar online the other day with some speakers in Australia. Halfway through, we had load shedding. I was the host, and it just cut off. So you've got load shedding, you've got political issues, poverty, you've got skills issues, you've got all the other. You've got a pandemic, you've got protests, and that's all in a week. But I'm sure you share the view that South African professionals and businesses are very adept at navigating issues.
Absolutely. Well, I think, Rob, there's two ways to look at it. I think the skills businesses and business leaders learn in terms of business agility and resilience become particularly important. But with that being said, I'm looking particularly in the COVID market and the riots in KZN which happened. I have to sympathize, Rob, with some smaller to medium-sized business which don't recover, which don't have the infrastructure to recover, which don't have the resources or leadership to recover. And what does that mean for those businesses? Because it's not only what does that mean to businesses, that translates into what does that mean into a particular person's livelihood, into a particular person's family's livelihood, and that extends. So it's a question of business agility and business resilience, but also being cognizant that there are others which are less fortunate, in terms of these experiences, which don't necessarily recover. And I think, whilst we're talking about patriotism and South Africans, I think, an important thing which President Ramaphosa mentioned when he was inaugurated was Tuma Mina, which was based on the Huma Sekela song, which means send me. And South Africans kind of adopted that song, and it kind of said, they had their own version of it and said it translate. If we look at the word of it in the wording of it, and what does it mean in terms of values, it means what can you do to help others and help those around you. Helping businesses which don't have the infrastructure, helping those that don't have the resources. Because whilst we're talking about agility and resilience and stuff, what can you teach to other businesses? And at my business in particular, one thing which we've done, and we've created this non-profit organization called Cobra, which is COVID Business Rescue, which is this ecosystem of partners in the legal space, in the business and consulting space, in the business turnaround space, which is this nonprofit organization which helps companies to kind of navigate through this COVID storm, so they don't necessarily know what to do or where to go. And our CEO drives that agenda quite strong in how can we help other businesses. And I think that's particularly important as well, as a big law firm or a big company, you almost got to look at, and maybe it's a challenge to other listeners here, what are your businesses doing to help other businesses, help smaller law firms, help the guy which is a one-man band law firm and only has 3 staff, who's really struggling now, who doesn't have the infrastructure. What are businesses doing to help? And I think that's just one thing which I'm really proud of, which my business drives. So I think that also becomes a very important part of the conversation. And sorry, I just gave you a different twist as to how to look at South African.
No, I love it.
Kind of, they call it gees, the South African gees, how they come up. But we also got to remember those which are less fortunate.
Tell me more about this. You say it's pronounced Cobra. You say?
Yeah, it's Cobra.
So it's Cobra. Okay, and is that specifically targeted to any type of business, or is it anyone that needs help, or?
Enterprises, but it's open to all sorts of businesses, and I'm happy to share a link. I think I gave you the website details now, and companies can really go and look up on that. And it's a lot of it's Rob, the worst thing that can happen is you're in a bad situation and you don't know what to do. So I think this is an ecosystem of partners which have really got together to try and help other businesses, and I think that's great. That's fantastic.
That's wonderful. I mean, I certainly would, from a personal perspective, if I could ever assist, I would love to help. And also, I think that's really remarkable. What we'll do is we'll make sure when this is published, we'll put the links down below and make sure that we promote that, because I think that is what is exceptional of your business and your CEO for driving that forward, and I'm going to make sure that we do everything we possibly can to promote that. I think that's excellent, because you really, yes, I mean, there's always when markets are tough and businesses are finding it really, really tough and collapsing around, there's a lot of there's usually a lot of financial help, which you don't normally really want, but because you're just going to make the mess worse. In some cases, but sometimes you just need a helping hand. Sometimes you just need advice. I mean, I know that a couple of my friends here who had their own small businesses that were really suffering. I've been through myself as a small, medium-sized business owner. I have been through good times, and I have been through bad times. So I tried my level best personally just to help them and advise them in terms of what they, just to navigate the beginning part when you don't know what to do. Yeah, absolutely.
And that becomes particularly important because, Rob, as we mentioned, not everyone's going to survive the COVID storm, and that, as I said, that translates to food in families' mouths. So we got to do what we can to help try and, mitigate that damage, because it goes beyond, just the law firms and the small businesses. It extends and it ripples on, and it also just talks about what's happening in the South African economy at the moment, and we're really trying to reinvigorate it. So I think these efforts and these ecosystems and these initiatives become particularly important.
Oh, absolutely. And it speaks volumes for yourself personally, but also for the company that you represent in terms of the values. They're obviously very, very key core values, and family and looking after a fellow man is obviously very important to you guys, and that's remarkable. And I take my hat off to you all. I think that we're not out of the COVID storm yet. I mean, I can tell you, I mean, you probably agree, but I don't think I've used the word pivot as many times ever before. You know, every month, yeah, just in this short interview. But yeah, I keep, you know, I mean, I think I get glazed looks from my team when I'm talking about pivoting again. We have to, because you have to stay nimble. You have to stay quick, because we never know, you know, what's coming next, and we're not out of that storm yet. From your business, oh, go on, sorry.
Also, you know, people to me, what does business agility mean? You know, what does agility in your decision making mean? How do you prepare yourselves for that? You know, how do you work on, you know, iterations of things and that type of thing? It's not just a question of, well, business agility, it's this term people are throwing. So I think also doing some reading on that, understanding what that means for businesses, understanding what that means for you and your team as well. You know, how do you prepare yourself? And, you know, I think that becomes particularly important as well.
Yeah, but that's something that you at IQ do really well, right? From a management consulting perspective with your clients, digital transformation and business agility and moving that's something you specialize in, right?
Something we specialize in. I think business, I mean, particularly agility, you know, we strong in the agile space in the South African market. And as a management consulting firm, we really drive that, you know, and I think in technology businesses in particular, I think that becomes particularly important in terms of teaching other businesses about being agile and agile decision making and stuff. And it's actually an offering of ours as well. So yeah, I think it does become particularly important. Yeah.
Agile decision making, yes, yeah. That a lot of businesses in the past have suffered greatly from having to go through many layers. Yeah.
I think, I mean, just agile is this way of working, and, you know, different ways of looking at things in terms of project management and that type of thing. And why is it particularly important in the technology space, you know, and in the conversation and context of you mentioning now in terms of businesses wanting to digitize, and, you know, digitalization being an important theme, and fourth industrial revolution. I think that also it becomes an important theme that companies need to focus on.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so not just getting them out of a hole, but how do you, I mean, then you're sort of helping to facilitate their growth going forward, and making sure they're best placed for it. And I was actually having recording a podcast here the other day, which is still being edited, with a guy by the name of Andre de Vet, who is, you know, very high, very sort of pivotal part and into the sort of mobile payment section, and I'm doing him a disservice. He's, you know, he's been around long enough to have been, you know, almost like the grandfather of that area. He's a fascinating guy, and I was sort of talking to him about, you know, professional services firms, law firms in particular, and, you know, and how they've had to adapt and change, and their offerings have, you know, have to change, and we talked about largely, you know, how to enter new markets, because that's a specialty that he has, and it all ties in with business agility and digital transformation and being quicker. And he you know, he had a lot to say, but really sort of centered around keep it simple, you know, keeping things simple, making simple moves, and being very agile, and realizing that there is a whole world of platforms out there now that one's services can be you know, showcased on. And if you are in the services industry, I mean, if you're a small law firm or a small consultancy firm in KZN, you could look into the Johannesburg market or even further afield. There are platforms that are available to you. And now with this whole remote working and not really mattering where you are in the industry, in the country, that you can service offer wherever you may be to whoever needs it. And is that something that you guys do as well? Is that something, is your client base mainly South Africa based, or is it global?
clients all over the world. I think our focus is on South Africa and Africa, mostly in the banking and technology space. But as you mentioned, Rob, I think with us really embracing this fourth industrial revolution, digitalization, being able to engage in remote meetings and remote works has really opened up now this myriad of new opportunities from around the world. And it actually makes it, if you ask me, easier to drive an internationalization theme because you don't necessarily need to get on a plane and fly to Hong Kong, for example, to execute on a particular project. You can do everything remotely. So I think it's also up to businesses to make sure that they drive this agenda and don't stay focused on a particular market. Obviously, leverage and really try and do the best in your particular territory that you're focusing on. But also, I think it is important that businesses must know that they have the opportunity now with the technology at their disposal. It's up to them to try and leverage that and get their services out there. Maybe it's in the form, Rob, if you're looking at a smaller type medium enterprise, they may feel intimidated to go into the international space, and they maybe got to realize that they don't need to do that alone. Maybe it's a question of them partnering up. Maybe that's an opportunity, partnering up with a slightly bigger organization that can take them into the international market, and then they start getting the exposure slowly but surely, and then they can go out and do their own thing. So then it becomes an important conversation then, and the teaming up and who they team up become important. As I said, it may be intimidating for a smaller enterprise to suddenly go and start doing work in America or another company, and they can go and team up with these medium-sized or larger corporates and try and really leverage and exhibit their skills, because there may just be hidden gems that somebody in Hong Kong or Canada is actually looking for in terms of executing what they need, but they haven't had the opportunity. And I think remote working and the technology that we have at our disposal really enables that now.
I couldn't agree more, Yesthiel. I think absolutely. I mean, I've always been a big advocate of my services and our services, and being able to mirror that in different markets. Obviously, be respectful of the local markets and how you might need to pivot it slightly. There we go again with the word pivot. But yes, and like you say, I think in many ways, SME businesses might look further afield and be a bit daunted, but there are platforms and partners available and advice from companies like yours that can arm them correctly to go into that, open up new markets, which are becoming more and more important as in the difficult times we find ourselves in. Now, I really just want to, obviously I'm conscious of your time, and I really, really thank you for spending some time with me. But in terms of specifically about the role of the in-house counsel or the general counsel yourself, and obviously we've talked a little bit at the beginning of how things have been over the last 18 months. What do you see for the short term going forward? Do you think there's going to be, it's such an open question, I apologize, but is there going to be more pressure on cost saving and not using external counsel, or is there more likely to be more use of external counsel, but a bit more pressure on their fees? Is there? What do you see? I'm only using two examples in terms of a relationship with external counsel there, but what do you see in the short term as maybe the changes for your role and things that are coming up that you need to be focused on?
So I think, Rob, I touched on this in my 5-on-5 as well. The external counsel and internal counsel will continue to have a symbiotic relationship. And that relationship becomes particularly important because as a general counsel, I think you got to focus on a lot of strategic decision making within your legal team, etc. And you don't necessarily within your teams have time and capacity to go and always focus on updates in the law, etc., getting expert advice on a particular issue. And really leveraging of the relationship with your external counsel becomes important. Whether they're in the labor space, whether they're in the M&A space, or, hearing from them what's happening in the market, seeing what they're seeing with their other clients, teaching you some of their experiences. That becomes particularly important. But as you mentioned, I think, in the context of the South African economy, I think the balancing act of costs becomes particularly important as well. What do we actually need to use our external counsel for? And what can we actually hold off on? And I think those decisions actually need to be quite strategic. Like, for example, us, when it comes to our debt collection, we haven't been particularly litigious, and that's, bearing cognizance of what South Africans are experiencing in the economy at the moment, and that if they are kind of, falling behind in payments, how do we facilitate an opportunity for us to settle the debt legally, either in the form of an acknowledgement of debt or whatever the case is, so that we don't necessarily need to go and pursue legal action against you. So that's just an example of something which I can mention. It just comes to mind off the bat, of something where we can try and look at, reducing costs, but also trying to achieve the best results for the business. And I think we've noticed, in those scenarios, the clients that we have engaged have actually been really appreciative, and we've grown relationships with them. And we've used our customer care. We've used our internal legal resources, and we've been quite firm with the negotiations and the legal documentation, etc. But just the fact that we've granted them certain indulgences, I think they've really appreciated it, and it's really gone a long way. But on the other hand, as I mentioned, there's some really bespoke expert legal advice which you need from, like a senior partner in a law firm, which is useful for your business in terms of guiding your decision making. So those partnerships become really important as well. So there's this balancing act in terms of what you can actually mitigate and save costs on, and what's necessary for the growth of the business.
And is business picking up at the moment?
Yeah, look, I would say business is picking up. As I mentioned, our clients are largely in the banking and technology space. I think I'm grateful to be in a professional services business that, is in that space. So we are actually able to adapt easily to remote working and servicing our clients, etc., and trying to leverage of that. So I think, no, business is picking up. It's really, really, really busy, and obviously hoping that translates into a number of other things. But yeah.
Well, that's good to hear. And that's a good positive note to end on as well. Also, my kids have just returned from school, so they're going to be banging on the door asking me for lunch in about 5 seconds. But I don't know yet. Whatever's in the fridge as soon as I get there. But I really, unlike a Zoom call, I'm not going to hang up. I'll just stop recording. But I really want to thank you for your time. And I know our listeners are going to be really, really enthralled. It's really good to get to know you better, get to know everything, how you've pivoted the business, to use our favorite term of the day, and how you're navigating the challenges, and thanks for taking us on your journey as well in your career.
Thanks. Rob, GRM and the intelligence and the insights you guys provide are extremely useful, whether it's in the form of the podcast or the 5-on-5, as we mentioned, using technology, LinkedIn as an example, to see what my counterparts in Africa, around the world, are experiencing. I'm sure I'm going to be listening to all the podcasts now to also see similarly what are the general counsels and business leaders in other parts of the world experiencing, and what are they experiencing in terms of pivoting, the COVID storm. So yeah, thanks to you guys as well for the wonderful work that you do, and always a pleasure working with you, Rob.